So my normal morning routine is to get up fairly early in the morning, and after my cup of tea, and I've cleaned my eyes out and I'm awake, I come into the church to do my prayers. And I'm going for about an hour usually, roughly. And I love praying in this church, but I'm starting to I've had a problem with praying in this church for a long, long time. For as lovely as it is, as nice as it is to look at, I get distracted because I'm the parish priest. So I'm praying away, and I open my eye, and I see a hole in the roof. In fact, there's one over there. I saw it yesterday. You see it? There's a little flap of wood coming away, and I'm like, oh man. So I start thinking, well, I've got to get that fixed. And then I look at some. Then I open another eye, and I see, oh, that bench is a bit loose over there. I've got to do that. And I just start looking around. And sometimes I actually get up from my prayer, I start walking around the church, just looking. I can't help it. I'm just one of those kind of guys. I'm a fixer. So I started to pray in a small room in the house now, so I don't get distracted, and I can speak to the Lord. The amount of times I've spent an hour in here, and I think, well, that was good prayer. And if God could speak from heaven, he'd say, James, you didn't speak to me at all. You were just looking around trying to improve things. But you know the number one thing that annoys me about this building right now, or that's kind of getting my goat? It's this sanctuary. If you were to take a helicopter view of the size of this sanctuary in relation to the size of church, it would take up 1/3 of the floor space. 1/3. Now, look how many of you here today. It's pretty full. There are people who can't get a seat outside. And so it kind of annoys me that it's so big. And it really is big for the size of this church. However, in one of my fits of prayer, I thought, I'm going to sort this out. I'm going to contact a builder, and I'm going to get it shrunk so it can go as close to the wall as possible, come in, and then I can fit more seats, because the Church of God isn't the building, is it? It's the living stones. It's the people who make up the church. So I got a quote on it. You know what it was? £45,000. It's brick under there. So I said to myself, that plan can go on hold for the time being. Do you know what I mean? It's like 45,000. I could smash some brick for free. In fact, I might enjoy it. Probably wouldn't be a great job. But it is a valid point. It made me wonder why in our churches today, if you see a new church being built or a new church being renovated, they seem to grow the sanctuary areas and the seating areas become smaller and smaller and smaller. It's as if the people building the church, our superiors or whatever, don't expect people to come to church anymore. So to make it look good, they make the holy bigger and the people of the world, you and me, smaller. It's crazy, isn't it? It's not what God wants. Do you know? But I was thinking again the other day, in this country and all over the world, we have a shortage of priests, right? Now, I wonder why that is. I was at an ordination yesterday, and I saw the man being ordained. It was a beautiful occasion. And I was sitting up on the huge sanctuary with 30 priests. I was looking around, I looked at him, and I watched him go from the ground, where I'm standing with you now, up on to the steps, separating himself from the people to do the holy function. I thought to myself, and it's a really sad thought in my mind, I thought, there's another victim. Someone we push away to do the holy thing so we can get on with our lives. That is not how Jesus lived his ministry. He didn't come to separate or increase the separation between the holy and the ordinary. He came to make holy the ordinary, to level out the playing field, to bring heaven and earth together. Why did God become flesh? He could have saved us like that, couldn't he? If he wanted to. He became flesh so that we could approach him and touch him and experience God in the most intimate way possible, in a way that chimes with our human heart. So as we build bigger sanctuaries, we bring ourselves further and further away from God. We push it into the extraordinary. When God became flesh to show us that he wants that relationship with him, heaven and earth, to be as ordinary as breathing, as eating and drinking. And that's why he makes himself our food. Now, we see this so clearly in the gospel today. You got the woman with the hemorrhage. It's a famous story, isn't it? And what's Jesus doing? He's fighting through a crowd. People are touching him from all over. He is close to his people. And yet the woman's still terrified to touch him because she knows he has the power to heal. She has that great faith in him, and she dare not go near him. But she gets the courage, and she just touches the hem of his garment. And Jesus, because he's so close to us, he feels the power drain from him. He has taken all from him. He said, "Who touched me?" And the woman approaches him. And what does he say? He doesn't say, "My power healed you. I felt your touch and I decided to heal you." He says to the woman, "Your faith has healed you." By daring to come close, by approaching me, by touching me, by allowing me to touch you, you have been saved. You see, holiness isn't something which raises us above people. Rather, it's something which brings us down to the level of all people. In other words, it makes us whole. Our community, our family, will only be holy the more it increases, the more other people are brought into intimate communion with Jesus. In fact, that's our mission as Christians. Those of us who have encountered Jesus, who have fallen in love with him by the gift of his Spirit, are called to share in his mission, to bring others to that wholeness, to that completeness which we seek and that we receive from Jesus. I had a very interesting quote the other day, about the Eucharist. And it said this. It said, when you receive the Eucharist, or Holy Communion, you not only receive Jesus, you receive the mission of Jesus. How true is that? I think that's one of the most true things I've heard all week. It was incredible. That quote was saying, your mission isn't just to come to Mass on Sunday and to worship the Lord, but rather to let this moment of communion, of intimacy with God, of intimacy with one another, be the fuel which sends you out into the world to build the church of living stones. You and me, men and women who don't yet know Jesus, who were created for him, they're our mission field. Now, the last few weeks we've been talking about invitation and about welcome. And that's why this culture is so important. Like I've said, it's not about standing on street corners with Bibles, but it's having the heart and the desire for your work colleague, for your family members, whoever it is, to come to know Jesus by extending the hand of invitation and then offering the warm embrace. And that's kind of what I want to just finish on or talk about just now. The warm embrace of the Christian community. Now, last week I was talking to a parishioner who goes to St. Mark's, and she said that a friend of hers had moved in from out of town. And she said, and she was wonderful, she said, "Why didn't you come to my church?" And she did. I was like, let's talk about A-star student, She came to church, and so her friend came to church, and I met her, and then she wasn't there the next week. I was like, oh, okay, does my breath smell or something like that, And I said, well, what happened? And she said, she loved the music at Mass. I was like, great, so that's great. Everyone loves the music at Mass. She loved the homily, so that's me. I was like, oh, I've done okay. But she said, well, why didn't you come back then? And it really hit me. She said, I didn't feel welcome. Do you know what I mean? It's so important, isn't it? Do you know? Because if we treat our worship as something we do, as a holy action, to the exclusion of all other things, then the newcomer, the person who doesn't understand what's going on, doesn't have a clue. And they think, oh, well, this is an exclusive club for the people who know. But it's not, is it? The church isn't an exclusive club. The church doesn't exist for its members. It exists for the people who aren't its members. And that's the atmosphere that we're called to create when we come to worship. The open door, the open embrace, the open arms. So a person comes in here, feels, before they know, the embrace and love and welcome of God. So that their invitation may be something that we can excitedly offer. So I can invite, I always say to people, come to Mass, and I do it with an excitement on my face because I know that they're going to have a good time, that they're going to see smiling faces. The amount of letters I've received from people from overseas who've been here for maybe a weekend who said, Father, I had a great experience at Mass, everyone smiled at me, I just felt like I was home. And that's how it's meant to be. That's the community that we're called to build, because that's how families grow. They're not members' clubs. They are for the people. If God wanted a members club, he could have just chosen those he wanted. And he did. He chose every single person he was ever going to create. But he co-opted us into the task. We are the chosen vessels of God to bring people closer to him by the extending of the hands. And then when that person dares to approach, like the woman with the hemorrhage, the open embrace, which I pray one day, as I'm starting to see it becomes the defining mark of our community. Amen.